Our education system wasn't built for you, it was designed to create obedient workers for factories. The result? Graduates drowning in debt with no real skills. The system is broken. But you can break free. Stop chasing degrees. Start building practical skills. Focus on self-reliance, not theory. That's how you escape the trap and unlock real financial freedom. The old system is dying. Are you ready to evolve? Let's go.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are taking the fire hose of articles, research, and personal notes you shared with us, and we're distilling them into a concentrated shot of insight.
And today we're wrestling with a concept that I think for a lot of people is going to be fundamentally challenging. It really goes against the way most of us were raised and educated.
It's deeply uncomfortable material, but you're right, it's absolutely necessary. We're about to do a deep dive into sources that allege the system we call education is, well, in its very DNA, not designed to create wealth or independence.
Or even entrepreneurial success. The argument is that it was historically engineered for something, I guess, far more elemental and, as you said, maybe even a bit darker. Obedience.
And standardized compliance.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's unpack this enormous claim. Our mission today is to trace the historical lineage of compulsory education. We're going to go from its origins on 19th century European battlefields?
All the way through its use in colonial administration.
Right, and then connect those original explicit intentions to the sobering statistics we see today. The dependency, the debt, the massive youth unemployment.
We're looking for the pattern, the structural link between the system designed for the average rule-following person and the surprising thing that all these hyper-successful individuals you found have in common.
And that commonality is the perfect hook for this whole conversation. Let's call it the great paradox.
Okay.
So think about the standard aspiration, the accepted social contract of modern life. You, the listener, the diligent learner, you follow all the rules.
You aim for that high attendance mark, the celebrated 90%.
You meticulously memorize the textbooks, you chase the degrees, the credentials, often taking on huge amounts of debt. And you do all this for what?
In the hope of securing a good job.
Exactly. A good job that lets you buy the big house, the stable car, and, guarantee some kind of security for your family. That is the dream we're all sold.
It's preached relentlessly from, kindergarten onward. It's this very linear progression.
But now let's pivot. Let's contrast that obedient, rule-following person with a short list of, global heavy hitters.
People like Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Richard Branson.
And from the sources you shared, names like Gautam Adani, Dhirubhai Ambani, even figures like the cricketer Virat Kohli, the actor Amir Khan, and the politician Narendra Modi.
Right. These are people who, regardless of what you personally think of them, have achieved just colossal success and influence. They define their fields.
And what's so crucial here, what your source material really nails down, is that they share something beyond just wealth or fame.
They all successfully avoided or dropped out of or just radically broke free from that exact standardized trap that the average person is proudly marching right into.
They rejected the paths early on, or they completely redefined what that path even meant for them.
So that leads us to the core question for this entire deep dive.
Why does the path that society promises will lead to stability and wealth so often lead to, crippling debt, dependency, and this paralyzing fear?
And we're going to examine this very controversial conclusion that this systemic failure isn't some accident. It's not just bad luck.
The argument is that the structure was engineered. As one of the commentaries you shared provocatively put it, it was designed to give you a foundation to fail.
Not to fail a test, but to fail at achieving true financial independence.
Exactly. And to understand that claim, we have to immerse ourselves in the reality described in the sources, what we're calling the listener's journey. This is the outcome for the person who does everything right.
Right. So after maybe 15, 18, even 20 years of rigorous study, hard work, investing a ton of money in tuition and coaching, the graduate finally has the degrees.
And then the wall.
Yeah.
Just endless rejection, the frustration of unemployment, and that sinking feeling that the credentials don't actually guarantee the future you were promised.
The sources gave us this one really heart-wrenching, specific personal anecdote that just crystallized this pain for us.
I remember reading this.
It's about a 30-year-old individual who showed just monumental commitment to the system. They studied for 12 years just in their specialized track.
And they achieved this dizzying array of qualifications. I mean, 3 postgraduate degrees, a BEE, a CTET, and NET qualifications.
Right.
That last one is required to be a university professor.
So on paper, this person should be one of the most qualified candidates in the entire country for an academic job.
Logically, yeah.
But the individual remains unemployed. And the emotional fallout that's described is just immense. They talk about the disdain they feel from their own family and relatives.
This academic failure is being seen as a kind of moral failure.
Exactly. They've retreated into social isolation, admitting they haven't even visited their own village in 2 years out of pure shame. The pain is so severe they describe crying alone, just desperately praying for any job, regardless of the status.
And the financial cost is just compounding this emotional trauma, right? This person had been financing their whole academic journey by tutoring since 2012.
So they're accumulating debt and making sacrifices only to feel like they've achieved nothing. It's the system demanding ultimate effort and sacrifice, but delivering crushing disappointment.
So what happens next? According to the sources, this is the final phase of the trap.
Eventually, out of sheer desperation and financial need, a low-paying job is secured. And it rarely matches the person's qualifications or what they expected.
The salary is low, which makes any kind of meaningful savings impossible. And that's when the dependency on the credit structure really kicks in.
You need a home, so you take out a home loan. You need a way to get to work, so you take out a car loan. You have an unexpected expense, so maybe you get some consumer credit.
And this combination of debt, the EMIs, the monthly payments, and an income that's just not enough, it creates this state of perpetual fear.
And it's not just financial fear, this is behavioral control. The fear of losing your job becomes the primary motivator for every single decision you make.
And that's when the trap truly snaps shut. Managing this revolving door of debt and household expenses, it just locks the individual into compliance. It completely suppresses any personal dreams of starting a business because taking a risk is now an existential threat.
And it forces you into a cycle. You get up, you endure a job you might despise, you come home, you do it all over again until that terrifying dependent existence just feels normal.
The biggest revelation that the source material forces us to confront here is that this predictable, fear-driven outcome isn't random. It isn't just bad luck.
The system, allegedly, was designed to produce standardized, dependent workers. It wasn't engineered to elevate individual talent.
It was engineered to create what one source called an obedient factory worker. The claim is that the people who built compulsory schooling were consciously trying to eradicate a student's independent will.
And to really process that claim, that the very institution we rely on for upliftment was designed for failure and obedience, we can't just look at modern curricula.
We have to go back in time to the system's explicit historical origin and find that DNA of compliance.
Absolutely. Let's go to the historical genesis of obedience, which begins not in a classroom, but on a battlefield over 200 years ago in Prussia.
Okay, so let's set the scene. It's 1806, the war between Napoleon's dominant French army and the very formidable Prussian military. Prussia was known for its discipline, its military might.
And yet they suffered an utterly crushing defeat at the battles of Jena and Auerstedt.
The Prussian leadership was, I imagine, bewildered. They had superior resources, well-trained soldiers, a history of military excellence. So how could they have been so thoroughly defeated?
Their analysis afterward didn't point to a lack of bravery or, problems with their equipment. It pointed directly at their command structure and specifically the intellectual quality of their soldiers.
What was the conclusion they reached? Because this is extraordinary.
They determined that their soldiers, unlike the strictly disciplined, almost machine-like troops of Napoleon, were exercising their own judgment in the heat of battle.
So they weren't mindlessly following the direct orders of their superiors.
Exactly. Independent thought in that high-stakes military context was identified as a critical systemic liability. If a soldier questioned an order or hesitated or decided his own local solution was better than the centralized command,
the whole strategy just breaks down.
The entire thing falls apart. And the consequence of this liability was existential for the state. Prussia was forced to surrender half its territory to Napoleon and sign this humiliating, restrictive peace agreement.
So the challenge facing the Prussian leaders became, How do we prevent this independent thinking from ever happening again in our future soldiers? How do you manufacture compliance from infancy?
The solution they came up with was radical, and, I mean, by our modern standards, it's terrifying. They realized that waiting until adulthood to discipline soldiers was just too late.
The solution had to be institutional. It had to control the brains of the next generation before they even had the capacity to think critically for themselves.
And this insight led directly to the birth of the state-controlled Prussian education system in the late 1800s. And crucially, its purpose was not intellectual flourishing or democratic literacy.
It was, as the sources note, purely a military solution to a military political problem.
The design was meticulous. It was an 8-year compulsory education system targeting children from ages 5 to 13. And the source material is just unequivocal about its explicit singular goal.
Which was?
To produce a cadre of mindlessly obedient soldiers.
A cadre of mindlessly obedient soldiers. That phrase just captures the entire intent, doesn't it? It's not a side effect, it's the design spec.
It is the design spec. The curriculum was strictly limited to serve this one goal. Students were taught just enough literacy and numeracy to follow complex orders, to manage basic logistics, and understand military hierarchy.
But, and this is the vital part, they were taught not enough for them to question those orders.
Not enough to debate strategy or to develop critical independent thought. The entire structure mandatory attendance, fixed curricula, the bell schedules, the unquestioning respect for the teacher, who is the superior in this case, was engineered specifically to eradicate the student's individual will.
To ensure they would be compliant people who accepted instruction without any hesitation.
Right.
I have to pause here. If this is the foundational DNA, it means that every bell, every subject requirement, every mandatory attendance rule that we have in modern schools has its philosophical root in creating a compliant soldier.
That's the argument.
But surely modern education teaches complex subjects like advanced calculus or literature. How does that still fit this mold of compliance?
That's a crucial question, and the answer really lies in the shift of purpose. The compliance structure, the method of teaching, that remained constant, but the goal adapted.
So the system worked. It produced obedient individuals who would follow their superiors.
And this successful model of compliance was noticed by a new emerging global power structure, which leads us directly to the industrial phase.
The focus now shifts dramatically from the battlefield to the factory floor. We're talking about the seismic economic shifts of the Industrial Revolution, roughly from 1760 to 1840.
The Industrial Revolution fundamentally reorganized human labor. I mean, machines suddenly allowed for unprecedented mass production, and this quickly made traditional, individualized manual labor, subsistence agriculture, and small handcrafted businesses obsolete, or at least economically non-competitive.
Right, a machine could churn out thousands of identical parts in the time it took a skilled artisan to make just one. And this led to a massive, accelerating demand for human input. But not skilled input.
No, they needed standardized, interchangeable human components, and that created a critical bottleneck for the emerging factory owners.
A severe shortage of compliant, loyal, and critically affordable workers, the laborers.
Right. The problem wasn't a lack of people, it was a lack of willingness.
Because why would someone willingly train their independence? If you're a farmer, you work your own schedule, you manage your own risks, you own your output. If you're an artisan, you have a specific skill, and you command your own price.
Why would you abandon that self-sufficiency and autonomy to work 12 hours a day for a low wage in someone else's dirty, repetitive factory?
Traditional life fostered self-reliance, adaptability, mastery all traits that are the exact opposite of what you need on a factory assembly line.
Which requires punctuality, repetition, and a complete submission to the rhythm of the machine and the command of the foreman.
So the demand for affordable, reliable, and compliant labor far outstripped the supply of willing, non-independent workers.
So corporate interest needed a solution. And the Prussian model, which was already successfully manufacturing obedience on a national scale, was the perfect template.
And the corporate adoption was immediate and global.
The source material explains that industrialists across Europe and later, America, they all saw the value. They started lobbying governments, funding initiatives to model their public education systems directly on this Prussian design.
So the new goal wasn't about winning a war. It was about securing economic dominance and control over the labor market.
The new sole purpose was adapted to create a generation of obedient workers by, and the sources say, killing their creativity and their belief in self-reliance.
The system was designed, meticulously, to leave the graduating student with only one clear, perceived option for earning money.
Securing employment as a wage earner in a factory or an office or an institution.
So we're really talking about cognitive conditioning here. The goal just transitions seamlessly from creating an obedient soldier to creating an obedient worker.
Because both roles rely on the same fundamental behaviors: following commands, respecting superiors implicitly, adhering to rigid schedules, and never questioning the fundamental structure of the hierarchy.
And this solves the industrial labor crisis. It supplied a massive continuous demand for affordable and reliable workers.
And the sources use really strong terminology here. They describe this as a form of brainwashing, where a child's mind is conditioned over years so that by the time they leave compulsory education, working for someone else seeking a paycheck is the only viable path to money they can actually see.
The possibility of creating their own value, their own business, or finding an independent path is just systematically erased.
Yeah.
That structural link military compliance morphing into corporate labor compliance, that is a truly staggering realization.
Yeah.
But the model didn't stop with industry.
No, it proved equally potent as a tool of political and administrative control. And that brings us to the third section, colonial application.
Okay, so we shift our focus to the British Empire's control of India. This same compliance model was implemented, but for political and administrative purposes.
The British faced this fundamental logistical challenge in the 19th century. They were a tiny fraction of the population. I mean, a few thousand British administrators trying to govern hundreds of millions of people across a vast subcontinent.
They needed control, but coercion alone was unsustainable and expensive.
They needed a mediating class, a workforce of clerks, lower-level administrators, soldiers, tax collectors, people who would enforce British rule not because they were forced to,
but out of a genuine sense of duty and, crucially, intellectual loyalty to the system itself.
Exactly. And this necessity sets the stage for the intervention of Thomas Babington Macaulay, or Lord Macaulay. In 1835, he presented his famous Minute on Indian Education.
This proposed a radical overhaul, the systematic promotion of English education over the traditional Indian systems.
Macaulay's proposal was eventually adopted by the Governor-General of the East India Company, Lord William Bentinck, and it became the English Education Act of 1835. This new system, rooted in those principles of centralized, structured learning, it became the administrative backbone of the Raj.
Let's really dig into Macaulay's explicit motivation here. The source provides his chilling quote, detailing the system's design.
He wanted to create a class of persons Indian in blood and color, but English in taste, opinion, in morals, and in intellect.
That quote is not vague at all. It explicitly states that the purpose wasn't assimilation into British society. It was about creating a loyal, functional buffer class.
A class that would be indigenous enough to interact with the local population, but intellectually disconnected enough to serve the British machinery without reservation.
So the education system wasn't about universal literacy or fostering indigenous knowledge. It was about manufacturing a loyal administrative class who internalized the colonizers' values.
Right, and who saw adherence to British rules and methods as their professional duty.
And it was highly successful.
Incredibly so. It created this massive, self-sustaining local workforce, from clerks in the bureaucracy to sepoys in the military who diligently followed orders. The sources note the tragic irony here.
That the level of conditioning was so thorough that Indians, educated under this compliance model, essentially became the most efficient tool used by the British to control and suppress other Indians.
So whether the master was the Prussian military, the early factory owners, or the British colonial administration, the goal of the compulsory education system was fundamentally consistent across continents and centuries.
The methodical creation of a dependent, obedient follower, primed to serve a larger, unquestioned structure.
And this historical weight, this institutional inertia, is what the modern education system carries today. Which means we have to now fast forward 2 centuries to Section 4 to analyze how these historical intentions manifest in the current landscape.
In the dependency, the debt, and the massive unemployment statistics we see right now.
Right. We've established the origins of the system. Now let's look at the modern consequences.
Today, education has, for many, ceased being a pursuit of knowledge and has morphed into a mandatory status symbol.
The pressure begins immediately. The first, highest priority for parents isn't identifying their child's unique aptitudes. It's making sure they get into a big school or good college.
The institution itself becomes the status achievement.
And then the parental relaxation sets in. They pay the often exorbitant fees, And, as the source describes, they passively relax, believing that this institution, this symbol, will automatically make their child's future.
And they stop asking the critical questions. What specific skills is my child learning? Is my child enjoying this? Are they being prepared for the world as it is today, not as the syllabus describes it?
And the system takes this fresh, curious, potentially creative mind, one that's capable of immense self-direction if it's nurtured, and it immediately constrains it.
It does this by creating a fixed, narrow world. You are handed a syllabus, maths, chemistry, physics, history, and you're told that is the only world that matters. Your entire value is based on how you perform inside that closed box.
And the constraint mechanism is highly effective. If the student deviates, if they explore a passion outside the syllabus, if they read or think about something else, it affects their marks.
And low marks lead to reprimand, punishment, and parental anxiety. This conditions the student to believe that exploration is risky and compliance is safe.
The ultimate goal of this entire process, when you view it through that historical lens we just established, is the creation of a person whose only goal upon graduation is to get a job.
To get external validation by having someone hire me.
That is the core of the dependency model. The curriculum never meaningfully teaches self-dependence, entrepreneurial risk management, or high-value creation.
Instead, the highest honor is placed on securing a stable job, even a lower-level government post, because in the mindset the system cultivates, a government job offers security until death.
The system was never intended to foster independence. Its ultimate unstated goal remains what it was during the Industrial Revolution, providing the industry with an affordable and good worker.
A worker who follows the boss's orders, respects superiors implicitly, works tirelessly, and expects only a paycheck in return, regardless of personal fulfillment.
But here's where we get into the economic reality, and this is where the system is failing even its stated goal of delivering security.
We can now measure the success of this system by comparing its promised employment and security against the reality. And the statistics are profoundly sobering.
They completely dismantle the premise that compliance guarantees success. We looked at data from the International Labor Organization, the ILO, which suggests that approximately 65% of the youth population in India is jobless.
65%. That means 2/3 of young people are not finding the employment the system promised them.
And if you dig deeper into that, 42% of graduates under the age of 25, these are the people who successfully completed the required degrees and followed all the rules, are unemployed.
Just think of the incredible investment here. People are spending over a quarter of their lives inside this structure, investing millions of rupees in tuition, coaching, and prep materials, often for the hope of securing a job that pays a meager era $30,000 to $40,000 per month.
And this devaluation of credentials isn't limited to general degrees anymore. The source material points out this worrying trend even among elite institutions, the very pinnacles of the meritocratic promise.
You're talking about the IITs, the Indian Institutes of Technology.
Exactly. We saw reports concerning the 2023 placement season. These are the people who cracked the system, the ultra-successful rule followers.
And yet, the news showed worrying non-placement numbers. 36 students unplaced at IIT Bombay, 40 at IIT Delhi, 31 at IIT Kanpur.
The long-held sacred assumption that you crack the IIT exam and you are set for life is now demonstrably obsolete. The system is failing the very people it holds up as its greatest success stories.
I have to ask, though, if the system is designed to produce obedient workers, why are the IIT graduates, who are clearly intelligent and disciplined, not being absorbed? Has the system just produced too many compliant workers?
The sources suggest that's exactly it, coupled with a fundamental mismatch of skills. The system produces certified conformity, but the modern global economy values applied skill scarcity.
And this is driven home powerfully by that comparison in the sources between an average Indian engineer's salary and that of an American truck driver.
This comparison is truly shocking. It suggests that an average specialized truck driver in America, a job that requires high practical skill and logistics management, but 0 university degrees, earns a minimum of 10 to 12 lakh per month. That's roughly $12,000 to $14,000 USD, even when business is slow.
And when work is good.
They can earn up to 20 lakh per month. That is 10 times or even more than what a highly credentialed, university-educated engineer earns in India.
The market is valuing practical, self-managed skill at 10 times the rate of theoretical academic achievement. That completely undermines the entire promise of the education system.
So what does this all mean? It means people are spending a quarter of their lives, their most dynamic, creative years, being educated and conditioned only to end up working for the dreams and vision of someone potentially less formally educated than themselves.
Someone who perhaps successfully avoided or broke free from this obedience structure early on.
Exactly. Which brings us to the inescapable cycle, the mechanism of the modern trap, and why people stay stuck even when they recognize the problem.
The source identifies two primary reasons for this inertia, and they relate back to timing and conditioning.
Number one, you're too young when you enter the system to have the critical thought necessary to analyze your situation. You just lack the experience and the cognitive framework to question why you're being asked to memorize things you'll never use.
And number two, the real psychological hammer.
Hmm.
By the time you reach an age where you are capable of critical thought, it's too late.
Right. The system has done its work. Either you've spent 15 or 20 years having your brain so thoroughly conditioned that compliance just feels correct and normal. It's a powerful form of learned helplessness.
Or you're saddled with overwhelming adult responsibilities.
The debt, the EMIs, the family, the expectations, all these factors make risk-taking impossible. You're financially paralyzed, and you cannot afford to break free from the paycheck structure, even if you hate it.
This is the financial inertia that locks the compliant worker in place.
The result is this perpetual paycheck-to-paycheck existence, constant anxiety over layoffs, especially when the unemployment rate is 65%, and the necessity of sacrificing your self-respect to obey your superior's orders.
It's the perfect system for total labor control. It ensures the worker remains affordable, compliant, and motivated by fear rather than ambition.
We've spent a significant amount of time diagnosing this issue, tracing the history, and quantifying the damage. Now the listener needs the path forward.
All right, how do we move from this grim diagnosis of a systemic trap to some kind of actionable knowledge? We have to pivot to Section 5, the way out.
This alleged trap succeeds primarily because society follows it quietly, with profound trust, and without asking questions.
So the source material suggests the only way to begin extracting yourself is to re-engage your critical thinking with two deceptively simple fundamental questions.
One, who created this education system? And two, why was it created?
And the answers, which we've just explored in detail, they fundamentally change your perspective.
Because it was created by military and corporate powers, and its explicit initial purpose was control, obedience, and worker provision. Once you accept that historical context, you can no longer just assume the benevolent intent of the institution.
And the world has fundamentally changed since the Industrial Revolution. That traditional assumption, crack the elite exam, get a safe job, retire. It just doesn't hold true anymore.
Not with the unemployment and placement statistics we just reviewed. The need today is not for more college graduates whose end goal is simply a job. It's for individuals who possess self-dependence and high-value applied skills.
This realization creates two distinct paths forward, according to the source material.
Path 1. You accept reality, you stay trapped in the compliance cycle, and you passively guide your own children into the same system, hoping they'll somehow be the exception.
Or Path 2. You forge your own path. You prioritize self-dependency. You explore ethical ways to earn a desired income, and you value skill over credentials.
And that shift from theoretical knowledge to applied skill is critical. We have to understand how the landscape for skill acquisition has been completely revolutionized.
The old expensive model is obsolete. The days of expensive, multi-year centralized college courses that delivered very little practical, high-value knowledge are rapidly becoming outdated.
Traditional institutions teach theory, but they struggle to keep pace with industry demands.
So here's the key difference the sources point out. Major complex skills that generate high value, whether that's advanced coding, high-level marketing, complex logistical management, can now be learned cheaply and quickly through decentralized online courses and mentorship.
And crucially, this modern education is often provided by people who have actually achieved success using that specific skill. They're practitioners, entrepreneurs, established experts.
They teach applied knowledge, not theoretical concepts from a textbook written a decade ago.
It's a shift from credentials that guarantee nothing to applied skills that can generate real, quantifiable income and independence, often within months, not years.
This leads to the final, essential advice, particularly for those of you who are parents or planning to be. The sources urge, send your children to school and college, yes, make sure they have a basic foundation.
But do not prioritize the mark sheet as the sole indicator of success.
The new metric has to be exposure and exploration. Parents should actively encourage their children to understand that the world is infinitely bigger than just maths, chemistry, and physics.
Those core subjects are fine, But they're instruments of measurement, not the whole orchestra.
And if your child's marks are low in the rigid standardized subjects, it shouldn't be treated as some catastrophic failure.
Right. It might simply mean they're focusing their energy and their natural cognitive strengths on a different skill or area of interest like design or communication or building things where they perform significantly better. It demands a necessary reframing of what success actually means.
The sources conclude with a truly provocative challenge to our deepest ingrained cultural habits, especially in hyper-competitive education systems.
Think about the cultural norm of accepting drop years. We often accept taking 1 or 2 years of total focus to prepare intensely for these rigid entrance exams like the GED, NEET, or GATE.
Exams that are meticulously designed to keep you in the standardized system.
But the profound question, the ultimate challenge, is this. Has anyone you know, ever taken a drop year simply to understand their own inherent passion? To determine their true interests and explore different entrepreneurial or high-skill opportunities outside of the prescribed academic track?
That decision to consciously choose self-discovery and applied skill acquisition over rote compliance, despite all the societal pressure, is the final and most powerful choice in breaking free from this systemic trap.
A trap designed for obedience.
And that brings us to the close of this deep dive. We've meticulously traced the lineage of the modern education system, from the Prussian military's need for compliance,
Through the Industrial Revolution's thirst for cheap, standardized labor.
and right up to Lord Macaulay's creation of an administrative workforce in India. The goal was always the same: obedience, standardization, and worker provision.
And now, you, the listener, have a choice, illuminated by this historical context and the current economic reality.
Do you want the stable, average life dictated by a system designed for compliance? A life often defined by chronic debt, dependency, and the constant fear of job loss.
Or do you want to pursue your unique dreams and potentially earn a large income by prioritizing self-dependency, critical thinking, and high-value applied skills?
The data shows that the system's promise is failing. But the opportunity for independent skill-based success has never been higher. The choice is yours to make.
But here is one final provocative thought for you to carry forward, building on that list of successful nonconformists we discussed at the start.
Okay.
If the current education system was historically designed to produce workers who follow orders and respect hierarchy, what fundamental skills or mental frameworks are actively missing from the curriculum? Skills that are universally essential for the people on that rich list, the Gates, the Adonis, the Bransons, who succeeded precisely because they broke the mold.
So consider what the system encourages you not to question.
Because that is likely the key to unlocking your own independence.